want the starting five for the decade of the 1960s. So I'll kind of spark the conversation. We're going to go position by position. But maybe you can tell me, Isaiah, as a child of the 60s, do you remember who was the first guy you kind of idolized or watched in the 60s and that possibly played the point guard position that you said, hey, that's the guy?
Well, it was Cousy. It had to be Cousy. And it's interesting, the 60s, the Celtics was really one of the first teams to integrate. So everyone in my family and around, the community, we were Celtics fans because they had all the brothers. My father and my mother was like, hey, you got to root for the Celtics because, they breaking down racial barriers and everything else. And even though we were in Chicago, the Celtics were the team they told us to root for. And so when we went outside and played basketball and you ran a fast break, they would call it a Boston. And also we rooted for the St. Louis Cardinals in baseball because of Bob Gibson.
Wow.
So those were the two teams that we rooted for. So
some good stories from
Cousy
from
was
the 60s.
Cousy was the guy at the point guard position at that time.
Where was Oscar Robertson?
I was going to say I didn't see him play, but for my family, it was always Oscar Robertson.
Yeah.
Oscar Robertson. So I would take Oscar at the point.
When you talk about Oscar Robertson, I was on a panel with Oscar Robertson and Jerry West in Los Angeles. And to hear Jerry West and to see Jerry West talk about Oscar Robertson, and I never forget, he moved up and he was like, look, I know I'm the logo and everything else. He said, but in my era, there was no better basketball player than Oscar Robertson.
Amen.
And Oscar was sitting right here.
Right.
And Oscar said, you right, Jerry.
You're right. That's
Let us know now.
And to that point, we applaud LeBron James, all these guys getting triple-doubles. And you look back then with Oscar, how he averaged a triple-double for a whole season. Yeah. With all the technology we have today, they didn't have the ankles, the MRI, all the stuff we have now. They didn't have back then, and Oscar Robertson was consistent for a whole season that way.
Well, it's funny too, because a period of time I was getting a lot of triple-doubles, and I saw them in '97 in Cleveland, where they had the 50 greatest players, and they honored them there. And he said, young fella, what you're doing is impressive, But I did it the whole season.
Not only that, Grant, if you look at Oscar's numbers, if you take his first 5 years playing for Cincinnati, over his first 5 seasons of his professional career, he averaged a triple-double. 1 season statistically he did it, but if you average the first 5 seasons, he did it.
And in the 60s, he averaged, 29, 10 assists, and 8.5 rebounds in the decade of the 60s. Shaq, if you had to name the starting center for that 60s team, and you're looking at Russell and Chamberlain and Bellamy, Willis Reed was playing for the Knicks back in the 60s.
Well, Wilt Chamberlain was indeed the most dominant player ever, but I was taught, from guys like Isaiah and guys like Mike that it's all about the championships. So Bill Russell has 11 championships. That will never ever be matched again. I think the closest to that is Mike with 6. So I'll probably have to go with Bill Russell on that.
We cannot throw out what Wilt. Wilt is Wilt. Obviously he didn't win championships, but I'm with Shaq. You go with winners because Bill Russell won so much, but when you start saying which would you start a team with, it's hard to go against the Big Dipper. It's hard to go against him.
So who would we take for our point guard for the 60s? Oscar Robertson?
Oscar.
Who we go with our 2 guard? Sam Jones, Jerry West, Al Greer. Jerry West is hard to go against.
You the logo.
Jerry West.
Jerry for sure.
Small forward.
Elgin
Baylor.
Elgin buckets.
And while we're doing our starting 5, probably if the best 6 man would be John Havlicek. But, power forwards.
I'm moving Russell to power forward and making Wilt
Reggie,
center.
you and me are on the same page because I could put Wilt Chamberlain
was the
anywhere.
best 5 of the decade.
Yeah.
So I'm going with my best 5. My best
Your
5.
best 5, no matter what position.
My best 5.
You make the rules as you go. That's
wait, hold on.
You can do your own thing.
I was told your best 5 of the decade. My best 5 of that decade is Oscar, Jerry, Wilt, Elgin, and Russ.
Okay, that's fine. That's
But
fine.
you can't.
And we'll all fly on one plane when we leave here, and you can fly on your own. That's fine.
You can't take Bill Russell and say, "Hey, you my power forward." Hey, tell him that. Go tell Shaq right now. Hey, Shaq, I'm gonna move you to power forward. You're not the center no more.
If you don't move Russ to the 4, then who's your power forward?
I got to go Big Bob.
Bob Pettit,
baby.
Yep.
Bob Pettit.
Bob Pettit, yeah.
All right. So we've got an Oscar Robertson, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, Bob Pettit.
Under Reggie rules, though, I might have Bill at the point.
Oh, now you
I mean, we're going, Bill, Pettit. I think it's going to be
my best 5. Let me see what y'all's 5 are. I'm going with my best
Bill
5.
at the point.
Bill Garden, Cousy.
If we're not using the Reggie rule, who's your center? Is it Wilt or is it Bill?
I got to go Big Bill.
Yeah. Give me Bill here.
Go Bill.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Watch this.
4.5. Here's the only way I can settle that. Our center for the 60s is Bill Chamberlain.